Talked to Chris Brown. James Cook had a touchdown and over 100 yards the last time these two teams played, which was in the wild card round last year. Bills going to win that game and knock Denver out. The Broncos are talking about revenge heading into this one. It's Jeremy and Joe. Good morning. Happy Football Friday, brought to you by Salino Law. Car crash, call Salino. Call the 8s. And by Crosby's Pizza and Subs. Crosby's Hometown Fuel. Game day ready since 1922. Chris Brown joins us on the Wester Hotline. Chris, good morning. The Broncos, it's funny. Like, you hear so much, Chris, about the Bills' run defense, and you wonder if Denver will lean into that, because they're a team that throws the ball a lot. Bo Nix leading the league in pass attempts. I was just looking at their pass rate over expected, and this is a throwing team the Bills are about to match up with.
That's right. And as we know, the Bills for years have built their defense to stop the pass. So, if they go to that tactic, you'd like to feel like the Bills are pretty prepared to handle it, especially with the way they've played on the back end the last several weeks. But I think even the Bills know you've got to make them one-dimensional first, and that means stopping their run game first and foremost. And look, R.J. Harvey has really come on since J.K. Dobbins has exited the lineup with a season-ending injury. They haven't run the ball as well as a whole, but Harvey has gotten better with each passing week, and I think has kind of assumed the lead role, so to speak.
Is there anyone on that offense that really scares you, Chris? We spent a lot of time on the Jags' weapons last week, and you mentioned Harvey. I think everyone thinks Sutton's a good player, but not to the level that, there's some receivers in the league, like a Puka or a JSN, where, it's like what the whole week is about.
Yeah, Sutton has all the physical capabilities of doing that. I think he had 7 for 95 and a touchdown in last year's game. So it's not like they shut him out by any stretch. So he's a concern. And then Troy Franklin has really come on in the second half of the season as a number 2 option, the way that he has put together career-high numbers, receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, and 5 of his receiving touchdowns have been in home games. He seems to be a more effective player when they're playing in Denver. So just guys to be mindful of. And, Sutton and Franklin are 2 tall, long targets. So they'll just put it up to them and say, go get it.
Of course, Denver comes in with a big rest advantage. They're on the bye. Their injury report has very few names for the Bills. We're waiting on a few questionable players. And I wonder, Chris, if you feel like Ed Oliver is sounding like he is optimistic. This might come down to trainers deciding. But what kind of impact do you think Ed would be able to have whenever he is able to get back into that defensive line rotation?
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate question as to whether he's activated to the 53-man roster or not. He hasn't played in 3 months, and you can do all the conditioning in the world. It's not the same as game shape. You add in the extra factor of altitude, and you have to sit down as a staff and say, can Ed give us 20 to 25 quality plays, 30 ideally? They do rotate a lot up front, but I think Ed has to be able to give them 25 quality plays for them to add him to the lineup. I'm not going to pretend to know if that's possible or not. I know he's been working like a caged animal the last few weeks. My office is right off the field house, and he has been working super hard. I know he wants to play, so we'll have to see what the ultimate decision is there. And then I think Ty Johnson, very quietly, is an important component to Buffalo's offense, especially on third down and the pass rush that this team can bring. I think in an ideal world, you'd like to have your third down bag available. If not, they're going to have to come up with, some viable replacements for blitz pickup and things of the like there.
Back to that in a minute, but, you mentioned, as we're talking defensive line rotation and pass rush for the Bills, I thought it was interesting, like Joey Bosa, his game against the Jaguars, there's some moments where he looks like he's getting a good rush, but it was more about how, I guess it was kind of just accepted, whatever. Like Bobby Babbage said it, that they want more out of Bosa. And I feel like that was telling, that they know this is a veteran. It's okay to say he needs to do more, because Bosa himself probably felt like he needed to do more going forward.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just rushing the passer. I think he's got to be a more consistent player in setting the edge. When runs would leak out last week, it was usually on his side. And it got to a point where later in the game, they had the practice squad elevation Andre Jones in on rundowns and they would bring Bosa in on passing downs. So, I'll be interested to see how that looks in the early stages of the game. Do they trust Bosa and say, hey, you need to be a quality edge setter as much as we need you as a pass rusher? Or, do they rotate players in to handle that part of the game?
Chris Brown with us on the Western Hotline. Chris, of the things you maybe have heard throughout the week that could be concerning, there's the receiver injuries, there's Poyer being out, there's the rest disadvantage. I'm sure you've gotten calls like we have about the elevation. What would be the thing that gives you the most pause about this game? Or like of those things that we've kind of been going through of like, okay, this is a disadvantage, but how big of one is it? Like how real do you think, that list is?
Yeah, I'm glad that the defense will not have crowd noise to deal with because the safeties are really going to need to communicate pre-snap with their disguises and such, and knowing that there's going to be a different person in there besides Jordan Poyer, I'm glad that crowd noise isn't an issue, so they will be able to communicate. I'm just very curious to see who that is because you have a number of choices there. I mean, it was Hancock at the end of the game last week, but Darnell Savage was inactive, and Cam Lewis just didn't seem to be a consideration last week. I wonder, who's in that role this week, and you still have DeMar Hamlin as a potential option as well now that he's been practicing for 2 weeks, but he's still on IR, at least for right now. So I think there's a decision to be made there, and it's an important one. And then the Ty Johnson situation, like I said before, I mean, that's a big one. You'd ideally like to have him. I think the Bills are going to employ a quick release passing game. He's a part of that, especially being down receivers. I really think Cook and Johnson have to be incorporated more heavily into the quick release passing game, something similar to the game plan we saw against Kansas City earlier this season that worked very well.
Down Tyrell Shavers and Gabriel Davis. Chris, it's two receivers that have gone out with ACL injuries, and I think most Bills fans would say like those two, the contributions they bring in other elements than just like being receivers. The run game, special teams for Tyrell Shavers. Of course, this means likely the Keon Coleman might get an opportunity here to be on the field and to make a difference, and it would be a heck of a story arc, right? Like what's happened for him. He started last year with a lot of promising play, yards after catch, the idea of being a bully on the field. Like we saw a little bit of that, and I wonder if the Bills will give him opportunities in this game, if they're needed, to try and recapture some confidence and make a difference for them.
It's certainly a golden opportunity for him. There's no doubt about that. The question is, what role does he serve? Does he serve his typical role, or do they slide him into Tyrell Shavers' role to do all the things that he does? I'm not certain that he would do it on special teams, but at the receiver position, does he adopt Shavers' role where, he's on the field more than anybody else? He's blocking in the run game, et cetera, et cetera. I think if he does that, then it's likely that Samuel is up, who, by the way, had a pretty good game against the Broncos last year, 3 for 68, including a 55-yard touchdown. And then is it Hardman that you bring up as your fifth from the practice squad, or did Wilkerson have a really good week and is quick on the uptake? Does he take Shavers' role, and then you leave Coleman in the role that he's had all season long? I think these are some of the decisions that have to be made with respect to the receiver position. So I think it's probably Samuel and Hardman at the end of the day, just because Wilkerson just got back to the team. But we'll have to wait and see.
And, of course, we should probably talk about Josh Allen at some point. The Bills quarterback, a warrior in that Jags game, battered, still gets it done. He looked to me, and I think to a lot of people, Chris, to be dialed in from the start, which is it's a good omen, I suppose, that not only was he the hero at the end of the game, runs it in, the tush push, but he took easy throws. He kept them on schedule. He looked like playoff Josh to my eye, and going into Denver, like picking up right where he left off, should have the Bills in good position.
Right, and I think you have to look back at what Joe Brady had him do, 2 weeks ago before the Jets game. He basically had him self-scout himself. It sounded, based on Josh's responses, like it was very revealing to him, and hopefully that continues to serve as a reminder this week, because I think he did take what the defense gave him to a large degree last week. When he had to make a special play, he did. but it was mixed in with a lot of good, competent, easy button play that kept the offense on schedule. He's going to have to do it again this week against a defense that is probably better all around than the one he faced last week.
Chris, what do you expect from Pat Surtain? He's a great player. If you were the Bills, don't have a number one receiver, so that's not like an easy. What would we expect from him? But if you were Denver, what would you be thinking about doing with him this week, or who to match him up against?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Shakir, but he's inside an awful lot, so I don't know that works per se. And Shakir doesn't often kill you in terms of taking a 3-yard catch to the house. He's done it a couple of times this season, but not to a degree where I could see them putting Surtain on him and just having him follow him around. So then it becomes, does Surtain get put on Kincaid? I wouldn't rule that out. I don't know if it's full time, but I think if Kincaid becomes a problem, I could see them making that move. But for the most part, they might just keep him on his side and say, just take whoever comes over there.
Chris Brown joining us ahead of Bills-Broncos. Chris, safe travels and enjoy the game from Denver, which looks like it'll be a nice night for some football out there.
Yep, enjoy the game, guys.
All right, will do. Chris Brown. We'll talk to him on Monday. It's part of Buffalo Bills Football Monday, hopefully a victory Monday. Chris Brown's appearance brought to you by Northwest Bank. For what's next, get started at northwest.com, by Northtown Volkswagen, Western New York's #1 VW dealership. Shop online at northtownvw.com, and by Lockport Outdoor Store, high-impact gear for hardworking men and women.